Fellow people of the former British Southern Cameroons, the children of the English portion speaking parts of Cameroon in the northwest and southwest regions, and those who are interested in their programs, I want to bring us information today about the role that our traditional authorities, the chiefs, have played uh, even before colonial times and throughout the colonial times to date in politics as we know it. In a previous program, I had indicated how our people came about chiefs, and I mentioned that our people were wandering all across the African grassland. And you notice that we had lots of animals, wild animals, lions, tigers, uh, elephants, and not so wild animals, buffaloes and deers. And our people lived in the grass fields. They were hunter-gatherers. But what happened, each tribe, conglomeration of people that speak the same language, practice the same tradition, they were living together. And usually they will meet in the compound of the strongest among them and decide to do those hunting raids, the men. And they will go out to hunt the animals. And when they come back with the booty, they stayed in the compound of the leader of the group and divided the meat and left the skin with the with that leader. And that's where the practice of taking the skin of important animals to the palace, or taking feathers of some birds, like red feather of a bird, to the palace. Because all the people gathered, the men gathered in the compound of the big leader to go and hunt. And when they came back, they gathered in his compound to divide the meat, and they left the remaining portions in his compound. Next time, when they came to go for hunting, he would cook to feed them using the leftover meat that was left last time that they came to his compound to divide. And like I said, they left the skin in his compound. And so that leader emerged then as the leader. And by tradition in our area, his children will succeed, and the people will gather and basically reconstruct his compound to be like a gathering place for everybody. That's how the concept of a chief developed. And the people were wandering from location to location. The stronger tribes will displace weaker tribes and seize their territory. They were looking for fertile ground, hunting grounds, place where you have good water, and place where people can rest. You notice some areas like Dog Plain, lots of tribes entered Dog Plain. It was a resting place. No more climbing up mountains and hills, which the elderly could not do. So, and then some tribes, were separated through the rivers and climbing of hills. So you have a portion of a tribe over here and another tribe that ran up the hills, the younger people, and stayed there. And they retained their traditional links. And that's how you find one tribe related to another, like, say, Babanke, uh, divided into one Tungo and the others. Now you can go to reasons why they separated. We'll not go into that today. But basically, that is how the concept of the traditional ruler emerged. And a good leader knows that his power emerges from his people. And without his people, he has no power. And to have authority, you have to have people under you. The more people you have, the more authority you have. The less people you have, the weaker your authority. And so good leaders want their people to be fruitful, to multiply and increase and be, profitable and expand and progress and do well. Only wicked leaders want their children to die. So when the colonial masters came, in this case, I talked about Alfred Secker having come before. Joseph Mary came to preach the gospel. You know about the Portuguese who had come. I talked about the Carthaginians, but I mean those who came and settled on the land and were now invading the land. So Alfred Secker came first to the former British Southern Cameroon and settled around Victoria, which is now Limbe, which he named Victoria because the Queen of England was called Queen Victoria. And he negotiated with the chiefs and even wrote a constitution to govern that area, which I had presented in a previous program. Now, the Germans followed later after the Conference of Berlin and took Cameroon, and Britain relinquished its Ambas Bay Protectorate that Afeseka had designated and appealed to the British Crown to take control over. The British handed it over to the Germans around 1887. So the Germans were now in control of around Douala there, as well as Bakurelan and the portion around Victoria. The Germans are very industrious. I've lived in Germany for 10 years. I know them. They're very hardworking. That's why they're economically very successful. They were very hardworking. They were introducing all the plantations that you see down there, the palm trees and the rubber trees and the banana trees and cocoa, all the different crops that you see that the Germans introduced. They even introduced the railway tracks. In fact, if the Germans had stayed, they would have transformed Cameroon into what looks today like modern day Germany. But anyway, so they were trying to settle there and they were opposed by the local chiefs. The chiefs were not ready to give in to these colonial masters who came from Europe looking white in color and skin. Remember that they came and gave our local chiefs little things like a mirror or hard liquor or cigars to smoke. And if the chief liked it, then he said, okay, you're free to take control of my territory. But some chiefs resisted, and the Germans also fought hard against them. But as they were building these plantations in the southern zone or in the southwest region, they noticed that the locals were not as hardworking. And so they decided to go further inland to get some people who can come and work in the plantations. As the Germans went further inland, they experienced resistance from all the different groups. The only person that collaborated with the Germans was the Fawn of Bali. So the Bali befriended the Germans. They became friends with the Germans, and that's why you hear the Mungaka language coming up very strong, which is the Bali language. And the Bali people now gave the names of all the different tribes. Like they will say the people of like Bande, the children of Nde, who was like the Fon. So the people of Nde, the people of Babanki. So you hear that Ba, it comes from the Bali people who gave the names as they were going around with the Germans. In a previous program, I had indicated how my paternal grandmother literally came out from Bafutland when the Germans infiltrated and in one of those Mankon Bafut wars. But I will not go into that today. I'm just trying to bring out here how the chiefs, some resisted the Germans and some befriended the Germans. And in the process, there was war between the Germans and the indigents. So when the Germans reached Mankon land, where my parents are from, then there was infighting, and you'd hear about the Mankon Bafut wars, where basically the Bali people, in collaboration with the Germans, fought against the Mankon people who collaborated with the Bafut and other confederation of other tribes around there. Who were basically having ethnic links. So they fought, and the first time the Germans were crushed, and the second time the Germans came again, the punitive war, and they burned the palace. And we can go into that. But there were chiefs that resisted. The Fawn of Bafut was now taken and sent to Douala in exile. As they moved and traveled across the land and reached Bamum land, the Fawn of Bamum also resisted the Germans. And I think from what I have read, he too was taken and sent in exile to Yaoundé. But that's a different story. I will not go into that. But I'm just trying to bring out here that the previous colonial masters, when they came, some chiefs befriended them, and some chiefs of our traditional leaders resisted them. And it caused a lot of warfare. You can go back to your traditional village and ask information how the interaction with the Germans were, and you hear for yourself what if they have the information. The local authorities can, or old people can tell you, and some people may have written it down on paper. But anyway, when the Germans lost the Second World War and the British came around 1918 and they administered our territory, the former British Southern Cameroon, from 1918 through 1961, was a period of almost 43 years. During this time, the British had a principle of indirect administration. That means as long as you recognize the British as the administering colonial authority, they allow you to administer yourself by your traditional values. So the chiefs, they knew themselves, they knew who their elder was. So, for example, the Fawn of Babanki is older to the Fawn of Bafut. So even though Bafut has more people, they are junior to the Fawn of Babanki. So they will respect, like we do in our local areas, you respect the person who is older than you. So that's where they had the concept of the customary courts, where the traditional rulers will deliberate among themselves cases that came up and resolve them. All the British were interested in is that they collect taxes and give it to them and understand that the British were the ones ruling. The British administrator was called a district officer in this case. But anyway, so then our chiefs were incorporated in the form of British administration while we were being ruled by Britain on behalf of the United Nations along with Nigeria. And I will read some information here, how some of our chiefs operated in those days. I just gave the background, what happened during colonial times before the Germans, then during the time of the Germans, and now we are in the time of the British. And I'll read some details of what happened with some of our chiefs during this time that the British were administering. As far back as 1952, Grassfield chiefs were already represented in the Eastern House of Chiefs in Enugu. So in Enugu, they had a House of Chiefs 1952. Remember that our people decided to leave the Eastern Enugu House in 1954. But as far back as 1952, some of our chiefs were already represented and active in the Eastern House of Chiefs in Enugu. For example, the Fawn of Bali sat in it. By 1956, divisional chiefs conferences were organized in Wum, Kambe, Bamenda. Remember that in 1954, our forefathers left the Enugu House of Assembly to Boya, and we started administering ourselves and choosing our own government, where Endele became the first prime minister, and then Foncha won elections in 1959, became the next prime minister. We started practicing democracy, true democracy, in sub-Saharan Africa since 1954 among ourselves. So by 1956, when our people had moved to Boya, you had divisional chiefs conferences taking place in Wum, in Kambe, as well as in Bamenda. These conferences became important platforms for chiefs to express their political aspirations, and you would hope that they will be speaking on behalf of their citizens. They want to protect and preserve the interest of their citizens and their traditions. The Fawn of Bali, as a member of the Eastern House of Chiefs in Enugu, took part in constitutional talks in Lagos and London, and later became the chief mobilizer of Grassfield chiefs. He toured the chiefdoms, reminding rulers of their obligations as natural leaders. You know, these were the natural leaders of the tribes. When we used to wander from place to place, stronger tribes displacing weaker tribes, we conglomerated around the traditional ruler who was a chief. So they were the natural rulers. So the Fawn of Bali here was a strong and powerful ruler who was active right far in Lagos before we went to Enugu, and even went to London and participated in constitutional discussions. And he encouraged and educated the chiefs about their role to participate in protecting their citizens and their rights. Nationalist politicians stood behind him. So even our political leaders, when they came, they were now literally being led by these chiefs. They were following, they stood behind him, manipulating, exploiting, assisting him to rally chiefs in support of their political objectives. So they were trying to use these chiefs to convince their subjects to, to adhere or to follow them. At this time, politicians briefed the chiefs on major political options of Southern Cameroons. So the politicians, whether it's Foncha or Endele or Muna, they would come and contact to the chiefs about what their aspirations were, what their ideas were, and trying to convince them about their ideas and proposals for the Southern Cameroons. An ideal chief will be a neutral person because he knows that all the citizens of his traditional realm will not belong to one. They can be Catholics, Protestants, Presbyterians, Baptists, or any other group, but they're all his children. So they can belong to any political party. They all belong to him. He should not be adhering to one and persecuting the other, because it will be like a father who, is killing some of his children. So anyway, the politicians were coming and trying to inform the chiefs, brief them about their political options for the Southern Cameroons. Secession from Nigeria and reunification with French Cameroon. What happened to the chiefs? Remember that I read in the Constitution in the previous program, if you happen to have listened to it, that it was the government of the former British Cameroon that insisted at Fumban that there should be a House of Chiefs, that the Assembly of Chiefs must be maintained, because we carried it from Nigeria and brought it to us when we went to Boya, maintained it, and we want it to remain. It will be almost like an upper house that when the lower house of legislators have debated issues, the chiefs too can review that in good faith, thinking about the welfare of their subjects, not the individual personal welfare, and will try to ensure that the population is taken care of. So, um, after we seceded from Nigeria and reunified with La République du Cameroon, on August 27, after we seceded from Nigeria, 1957, 20 chiefs met in Kumba. 20 chiefs met in Kumba, including decent group heads from Mamfe, Kumba, and Victoria. These are those from what we call the Southern Zone. This marked a turning point. The Fonobali, who had once allied with the KNC of Ndele, defected by openly attacking Ndele, the KNC leader. The KNDP leaders, mainly grassfielders, had succeeded to win him over. So you see, it looks like the Funcha coming from the northern zone, Joa coming from the northern zone, even Mona coming from the northern zone. They had convinced the Fano Bale, who is in the northern zone, and he defected from KNC. I wish he had not, but because it just brings the rift that we have between the southern zone and the northern zone. Basically, he had defected and left KNC that he had been active in, and was now following Foncha's group. On January 28th of 1958, grassfield chiefs gathered in Bamenda, so those of the northern zone, where most dissociated themselves from the KNC and rejected political integration with Nigeria. So that's when this debate between do we want to join Nigeria or do we want to join La République du Cameroun? Now, if I look at it traditionally, the Fonobali probably did not desire us to join Nigeria because there are many Bali groups within the northern zone and they have links with the people of Fumban as well. And so you can see that he maybe felt that it was better for us to join La République du Cameroun. Probably that's why he decided to leave KNC and join KNDP. It's just my speculation here. So by March 5th, 1958, the chiefs decided to actively campaign against the KNC KPP alliance, portraying it as opposed to traditional institutions and led by non-grassfielders. That's an unfortunate word that is used here. So that's what they said. The KNDP countered this by branding itself as the defender of traditional norms and symbols. Remember, this is politics. So now the KNDP of Funcha was saying that we are the ones that defend traditional norms and symbols, and so we are for the chiefs. In response, Dr. Ndele, then the Prime Minister, attempted to reverse this perception by creating a House of Chiefs ahead of schedule. So can you imagine? Ndele created the House of Chiefs, fulfilling the resolutions of the Southern Cameroons Chiefs Conference in Kumba on 31st March to 1st April of 1958. So when they had this conference in Kumba, they thought that there should be a House of Chiefs, and Ndele is the one who brought it into force, which I thought was a good idea. As elections approached in January 1959, all parties needed chiefs' support. So Ndele's party needed the chief support. Foncha's party also needed the chief support. At the Mafre conference in December of 1958, chiefs endorsed the unification policy of the KNDP, rejecting Ndele's efforts to win them back. So even though Ndele is the one who literally put into place the House of Chiefs in 1958, they rejected his platform and Ndele could not win their support. The British High Commissioner, J.O. Fields, toured the grass fields to brief the chiefs on the importance of the upcoming chiefs. So can you imagine this British white guy, J.O. Fields, toured the grass fields and briefed chiefs in their palaces about the importance of the upcoming House of Chiefs. After the KNDP victory in 1959, the House of Chiefs was created and made for the first time on September 5th of 1960. Four seats were reserved for the paramount rulers of Kom, Nsop, Bafut, and Bali. because they have large territories. And so has a whole entire division. The Bicom Fon had an entire division now, Boyo division, to him alone. And so was a very large group, and Bafut people are also very large. Bali, also important. You don't see the Fon of Mancon in here. I have some information I could share, but I will leave that private. How the Fon of Mancon, who came on the throne in 1959, how he then went into politics, but that's a different story for another day that I don't know that I will share it in public. 9 additional seats were reserved for over 300 grassfield chiefs to compete for. Can you imagine we had over 300 grassfield chiefs in those days? I don't know how many we have now. And so 4 seats were reserved for Com, Bafut, and Bali, and then the other 9 seats, the other chiefs will compete for those. The House of Chiefs was advisory in nature. That means the debates can take place in the assembly with the prime minister and all of those things. The chiefs can listen and give advice for the welfare and benefit of their natural citizens. It could not initiate bills, but had the power to postpone or prevent their adoption. The chiefs could have some power. They could postpone the implementation of certain bills or prevent them being adopted. The 1960 Federal Constitution granted it a unique position in recognition of chiefs' roles during the years leading to secession and reunification. And like I read in a previous program, it was the people of the former British Southern Cameroon that insisted at Fumban that they should preserve the House of Chiefs. The La République du Cameroon did not really take care of their chiefs. They did not have as many strong chiefs as we have. They have some in Bamileke land, like Fumban, Bafusam, and all of that. But when you go to those other smaller areas around the southern region, you don't see any serious chiefs in there. When you go to the northern part, the Muslims, they also have some very strong, powerful chiefdoms. They have different names for those. But they did not have a house of chiefs like we were practicing in West Cameroon. And you see here that even the British commissioner went around. The British High Commissioner J.O. Fields even toured the grassfields and was briefing the chiefs and educating them about the importance of legislative projects and political activities that were taking place and major developments that were going to come their way. So La République du Cameroon never had that. So the 1960 Federal Constitution granted it a unique position in recognition of chiefs' roles during the years leading to secession and reunification. The new roles of chiefs after the reunification. So over the next 20 years, chiefs in Cameroon, particularly grassfield chiefs, came to realize their position and importance within the new nation state. They were no longer isolated rulers within defined territories, but were increasingly caught up in the political process. Some risked losing relevance if they failed to adapt to the political change, and so, to the point where some chiefs now basically joined and became members of parliament, and that's how the Fon of Mancon ran in Mancon on an independent ticket and won and went into parliament first in Southern Cameroons before eventually into La République du Cameroon, into the Federal Assembly as a member of parliament. And so the chiefs adapted and then became very active in politics. Chiefs participated directly in electoral politics during the first West Cameroon House of Chiefs elections of July 11, 1960. Electoral colleges were established and chiefs voted for their representatives. Besides the 4 ex officio paramount chiefs, elected members included people who were elected into office among the chiefs. Chief Walang of Aram in Womb, Chief Mebo of Isu in Womb, Chief Gogomo of Bambalang in Dop area, Chief Ngwo of Mfe in Kambe, Chief Kebongsi of Ndu also was voted into office. By 1968, over 300 chiefs registered for elections. 48 from Womb. Womb alone had 48 chiefs. 14 from So, 94 from Kambe, and 123 from Gwofon in Momo Division. The House of Chiefs allowed rulers to play a constitutional role in governance, offering a check on government activity and protecting chiefs' interest. And chief's interest here is not individual personal interest of the person in the position of a chief, but the interest of their tribal people, the interest of their natural subjects, the people who speak the same language, practice the same culture that he was administering, the people that basically his forefathers led to their current locations. So the chiefs were watching over those and protecting them. The House of Chiefs allowed rulers to play a constitutional role in governance, offering a check on government activity and protecting chiefs' interests. The 1962 recognition of chiefs' law, approved by the chiefs themselves, defined government's role in the selection, installation, and recognition of natural rulers as well as in dispute settlement, to the point where now the government is categorizing them as first class, second class, third class chiefs. The legislative function of the House ended with the 1972 creation of the United Republic of Cameroon under the one-party system of Cameroon National Union. Chiefs were rallied to help forge national unity. Like European aristocracies, grassfield chiefs lost much of their pre-colonial and colonial power. However, they retained influence in two spheres: within the nation-state as administrators, politicians, or CNU representatives; within their traditional settings as custodians of custom and symbols of identity. By the 1970s, many chiefs had dual roles. The chief of Bambalang, a former police officer, became the governor of the Southwest. I suspect this may have been Fonfose Yakumto. Chiefs, others were teachers, Chomba, soldiers, Nguo, Nja, Mundomuan, or CNU section presidents, Chief Nji of Wei, Fon Mba of Batibo, chiefs of Mankon, Batibo, and Wei served as parliamentarians. About 20 grassfield rulers were elected in the municipal elections of September 1977. And it went on and on. As a presidential decree of 15 September 1977, that's Ahijo, further integrated chiefs into Cameroon's political system, defining their roles and powers under the one-party framework. Chiefs thus became vital agents in Cameroon's socio-political evolution, leaders of the state could not ignore. So this is important information to see how chiefs became important in politics in Cameroon. You know, the West Cameroon was instrumental in elevating them to that position, insisting in the constitution of Fumban that the House of Chiefs should be maintained, and they were tolerated more or less right through till when Ahijo then co-opted them as auxiliaries of the administration. Today they are known as auxiliaries of the administration. That means they collaborate with the Ministry of Territorial Administration, with the DOs, and in fact, they have their power, their traditional authority has been undermined so much that they've been relegated to people taking envelopes from small deals, small boys that went to Enam, come from some remote areas that don't even know the value of a chief. They will be bringing envelopes of money that was taken maybe by bribery and corruption by the side of the road to come and give our traditional rulers every month and retain authority over them. And then they're gifted some few things like cars, and they are undermining their citizens, even going to the point of betraying their citizens to be killed by the La République du Cameroon. It's unfortunate because you realize that in the West Cameroon administration, these chiefs were not only advising, but they could withhold legislation if it infringed on the benefits and rights of their subjects. They could vote in their house to withhold legislation. But now I'm not sure they even have the ability to resist anything shoved down their throats by the local governor, who is a stranger basically in the territory, a foreigner from La République du Cameroon, shoving things down their throat. And they literally take it and thank him and themselves. Some even go as far as shaking hands with women and commoners, when in their territories they will not shake hands with notables, their sons and daughters who are instrumental in developing the village. They will not shake hands with them, but they go and shake hands with commoners and women in public in other places. In fact, it's very unfortunate. And I see some of our chiefs have even gone to the point where they're carrying um, titles and go give to non-indigents out of their areas of jurisdiction. They go to Yaoundé and give titles to people that are not from their village. It's very unfortunate. Instead, you stay in your house, and those people can visit you. And if they have done something important and useful to the benefit and welfare of your subjects, you can honor them and give them those titles inside your house. You don't go finding them in public and giving them titles. And also, what belongs to the village is the meat of the children. So before you even give a title to a commoner from outside, many of your sons and daughters in the village should have had those titles. So you cannot be depriving your own sons and daughters in the village of what you consider to be important titles in the village, but you carry them and go and give to foreigners, strangers, in a foreign land, just to show some relevance that you are a leader from an area. You can see how our traditional rulers have literally lost their dignity and respect. It is really very unfortunate. I hope that this situation will be reversed in the future as our fortunes are restored. Our fortunes will indeed be restored, and the tragedy that has befallen us will evaporate and disappear. I think I will end here for this day and thank everybody. I hope it was a helpful information that I shared about the evolution of the political activities of our chiefs before the colonial times, during the colonial times, under different colonial masters, the Germans, the British, and then in principle now I would say under the colonial time of La République du Cameroon, high-handedly led by the French. So thank you guys very much, and I wish everybody a good time till we meet again to share useful information about our story. Thank you. Adi, we see. Oh, come on. Adi.